Mayor, with that understanding that that the facility won't actually operate until we have until this comes back to us with an agreement for review, and there's been a discussion about it, and we're able to have a hearing based on the terms in black and white, the terms in writing that will govern the operation of this facility. With that understanding, I'll support the motion.
Councilmember Morrison and then Spellman.
Chief, when can we reasonably expect that interlocal agreement to become available and for our review?
We're going to have the privacy policy ready, our final draft, internal draft, done by the end of the month. And so once we do that, we will get we will set up a meeting very quickly with some of the groups out here and some of the public folks to weigh in on the policy, and then we will present it to the Public Safety Commission. And then at that point, we will finish up with the interlocal probably by the end of September, October at the latest, and then you'll have plenty of time. The bottom line is we cannot go operational until you feel comfortable with the interlocal. So even though we have a target date of being operational in December, nothing precludes us from waiting until January, February, or March, or whatever it takes for this body to be able to vet the policies and procedures and to feel comfortable with what we're proposing to do.
And although we're the lead agency, similar discussions will be taking place in Round Rock and Pflugerville and Travis County Commissioners Court on the same issue. Is that
yes,
correct?
All the different governing bodies, political bodies, are having the same conversations and have to weigh in on this as well.
So by the end of September, we should be in a position to have the conversation about what the exact terms are, what the policies are going to be, what you're actually going to do.
That's our target date, yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Morrison.
Just to follow up, I just wanted to get some confirmation about timing. One thing is you said that your internal draft should be ready by the end of the month. Now, this is actually something that it's the same document that all these different governmental jurisdictions have to sign. So if you've been working with it, it's been worked among all of you?
Yes. We have not been working in a vacuum. We've had working groups with the elected officials, also with the police chiefs and with the other entities involved. It's been an ongoing process, and it is a step-by-step process, and the next step is the actual agreement, the policy, and then the interlocal for all of you to discuss and to have a public hearing on.
And have you been interacting with all these different stakeholders to gather input?
No, because we haven't put together what we believe. We want to have something to give them to chew on and to actually evaluate. Well, that's what, once we give them that framework of what we think is a model
Chief,
policy, then they'll have that.
Just a second, Chief. Comments are not in order, so if any more are made like that, I'll have to ask you to leave the room. Go ahead, Chief.
And that was John Bush. He knows that I am committed to allowing him to weigh in on whatever we put together. We will consider whatever his recommendations are, and then we either agree to adjust the policy or we agree to disagree, and then we will bring it to this body for your final consideration. You can hear both of our perspectives. But I think we'll find more common ground than John thinks we will, because his concerns, a lot of them, we share. And we know the mistakes he's talking about, and we don't plan on making the mistakes. It's kind of like having my older brother. I learned from his mistakes. Well, the older fusion centers, we're going to learn from theirs.
My experience, Chief, is that if we gather, input and concerns before we even generate our own internal draft, the end product ends up being a lot better, because we don't, head off it's easier to get things right in the first place as opposed to trying to correct things in the past. And so I would certainly urge you to try and touch base with some of these folks ahead of time as you're getting that internal policy. Because, this is Austin. It's not clear that these are going to be concerns shared by other folks around in different jurisdictions. Maybe they will be. Okay, and one of the other problems that we run into, well, two problems we run into in community conversations, having enough time to have the public conversation and having the public conversation in a relaxed enough environment so that it really can be a conversation. It really can be a conversation and a back and forth, as opposed to what often happens in our more formal settings like boards and commissions is 3 minutes and all of that. So two things. What kind of timeline do you foresee in terms of once the draft, however it's created, is public to in terms of time before you would want to bring it to council? And do you foresee sort of a broader format for a conversation beyond a commission?
Well, first part of that question, I just want to reassure the council that we don't have an artificial date to go operational. We can push December back to however long it takes for this body to be comfortable with whatever the debate is or the discussion. One of the things that I want to do because the ACLU representative, I forgot her name, she's back there somewhere, wants to have a public hearing. Well, those public hearings sometimes turn into screaming matches right off the bat. We need to have something to present to people. I want to start when we have our draft with the ACLU, with Texans for Accountable Government, with maybe the Civil Rights Projects and others, to let those organizations weigh in. And once we kind of massage either collectively an agreement or an agreement to disagree, then I'd like to have the public input. And then at that point, when we're done with it, we'd bring it to you all so you can have all the data, and then you can have your public hearings before you act on it.
And I agree that I think what you're talking about is getting people around the table and
Yes,
rolling up their sleeves.
absolutely.
Okay. And then another comment I want to make in terms of, individual assurances by officials in any capacity. I think one of the really important things about something like this is that the system define the constraints and the requirements for compatibility, because it needs that system needs to live beyond you or me or anybody else that's going to be making assurances. So as you're developing what you and the community will be developing, I hope you'll keep that in mind.
Absolutely, and I think with an audit process, hopefully this system will still be here long after I'm gone, and a system is only as good as its oversight, and with a proper audit, it doesn't matter who the chief is, and with proper oversight, I don't think we'll ever have to worry about it.
And one thing you might look into is to make sure that our auditors will have the authority to look at all the data that's in there, because that's one of the issues that arises.
Just off the top of my head, I think they'll have the ability to look at, to make sure we're doing what we're doing. I don't think they'll have the authority to go and say, well, they're looking at this guy who's committed a crime. That may be a different matter, but we'll look at all the legal aspects of exactly what authority they have, and you will know that going into whatever you need to vote on in the future.
Okay, thank you. And just to reiterate, I am seriously concerned about us having enough time to have this conversation, so I think we need to make sure that informal and formal conversation is comfortable and adequately addresses all the issues.
And I think we will have enough time as you need, because we can't go operational until you approve it.
Right, but sometimes when things get posted on the agenda, there tends to be a little artificial, at a minimum, some pressure. So I appreciate you working with us on that.
Any more comments? All in favor of the substitute motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes on a unanimous vote, 7-0. So those are all the items that we can take up this morning. The rest are posted for a time certain. So we will go into closed session. Without objection, the City Council will go into closed session pursuant to Section 551.071 of the Government Code for consultation with legal counsel to take up two items. Item 44 concerning council's authority to establish council's meeting procedures, and item 45 concerning requirements to adopt the budget and set the tax rate. Is there any objection to going into executive session on the items announced? Hearing no objection, the council will now go into executive session.